Hello there, people of the internet. One huge thing that I hear from people whenever they complain about modern firearms is that all of your modern handguns, if we're talking defensive handguns, look the same. Not unless you're getting something really unique like a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum or I don't know, a Desert Eagle or something like that. Pretty much all of your defensive, practical, all-purpose handguns end up looking the same. And there's kind of a reason for that. There's two real copies of firearms that most of your handguns are more or less replicating. There's a lot of 1911 copies out there, and there are a lot of Glock clones out there. Now, whenever I say Glock clone, I don't exactly mean like parts interchangeable levels of cloning. I just mean that clearly the design is made to mimic the functionality and the mechanical natures of Glock. And we see that in a tremendous amount of firearms that are manufactured today. As a matter of fact, I have a couple right here, and I mean, this is just like the absolute tip of the iceberg whenever it comes to Glock clones. This is a Taurus, this particular one, a G2C, and it operates exactly like a Glock does. It is a polymer frame handgun. It disassembles exactly like a Glock. Take this, pull, actually I should probably do this off camera so I don't get in trouble for firearms modification, but if I pull the slide off, then you can look inside the slide at how this thing operates, and it looks exactly like a Glock, and that's because this is literally just a copy of a Glock. As a matter of fact, right here I have a Smith & Wesson SW40B, and it is so reminiscent of how a Glock actually mechanically functions that Glock actually sued Smith & Wesson for these handguns, and I think they won the lawsuit because these are pretty much a direct copy of the mechanical nature of a Glock. That's what these are. If I take this right here and I pull the slide off, it's going to look identical to the Taurus because both of these firearms mimic Glock. Now, how a Glock actually works, it has the same tilting barrel style that the 1911 has. The lockup is a little bit different. This right here locks up on the ejection port versus the 1911, which has a lockup that's actually built into the slide itself. They disassemble a little bit different, but for the most part, the Glock uses the same Browning style tilting barrel action. And that is just the easiest, simplest, most cost-effective way to produce handguns that aren't straight blowback systems. And we still utilize that system to this day, even, I don't know, 110 plus years after the design was adopted by the United States military. It really was a revolutionary design. Now, Glocks are mechanically very similar to the 1911s. And that's one of the reasons why 1911s and Glocks are both predominantly on the market. There's enough change with a Glock to justify it being its own branch of mechanical firearm, but the 1911 is just so overwhelmingly iconic that I don't think it will ever die whenever it comes to American culture. However, Glock has become such a well-known, well-liked, well-respected handgun, not just in the United States, but all around the world. It has become the universal handgun. Like in the United States, many years ago, the 1911 was the universal handgun. Nowadays, everybody has moved on to a Glock or some sort of Glock variant. There's so many different copies of Glock out there, and a lot of that has to do with expired patents and the fact that it's just a good, cheap, lightweight, compact system that can do so much, and it's so cost effective. Like, a lot of times you see these Glock clones and they're stupidly dirt cheap. Like, I picked this one up for less than $200, this Smith & Wesson right here, significantly cheaper than an actual Glock, but it's just a polymer frame handgun. It's very lightweight. It's a really good little handgun, and the Glock system is just a really good style of handgun system, which is one of the reasons why all the Glock clones tend to lean themselves towards being really good. Occasionally you get ones that really aren't that great, but for the most part, if they mimic the Glock system, it ends up being an incredibly good system. One of the reasons why all these guns basically look the same is that we've figured out the best way to make guns. And there are other handguns out there that are not Glocks and that are not 1911s. Like, look at the Beretta M9. There's also a very popular system because it was adopted by the United States military. And we don't really see a whole lot of other firearms out there besides Beretta M9 and M9 copies. They don't really come in all that many shapes and sizes. You got ones in 9mm and ones in .380. But for the most part, that's pretty much it. All the firearms that use that M9 Beretta 92S style of system, they all pretty much look like that Beretta. Whereas if you have yourself Glock clones, they're very reminiscent of Glocks, but there's some pretty gosh darn clear indications that this right here is not a Glock. It looks quite different than an actual Glock. But just because it looks different does not mean that it does not function the same, and that is one of the biggest things whenever it comes to the firearms community. Just because it looks different doesn't mean that it does things differently. Like, for example, look at the AR platform and how people freak out over that, and it's a scary black rifle and no American should own that. But at the same time, somebody has a Ruger Mini 14, also a semi-automatic firearm that fires 223, 556, takes external magazines, can have muzzle brakes, can have folding telescoping stocks, can have pistol grips, etc., etc. And because it's got wood on it, oh, suddenly that is an okay rifle for people to have. Same thing with Glocks. They might look different, but they're basically going to be the same and operate the same. This right here, the Taurus, that looks very different from a Glock. This right here, very reminiscent of a Glock. This right here might not be the best example for the argument that I'm trying to make here. But yeah, mechanically, they are all just copies of the Glock, and the Glock has served its time and proven itself time and time again in multiple conflicts all around the world. It is just proven to be a very reliable platform and a very reliable system, and we are to the point to where patents have expired and other companies out there can make this very reliable, very cheap, cost-effective, material-effective handgun and sell it on the market. And it's a very proven design. It's a good way to get a really reliable handgun for not a lot of money. That's one of the huge benefits of these dirt cheap Glock clones. There's a lot of people out there making them because that's one of the biggest demands that is out there on the market. Everybody wants a Glock because that's kind of what Glock has turned into. It's turned into the de facto go-to handgun for everybody in the world, whether or not you're a civilian or law enforcement or anything like that. And so a lot of people don't want to pay Glock prices, so some companies come out with these dirt cheap Glock clones. You still get the mechanical natures of the Glock and the reliability of the Glock system, but you also get to not spend a whole lot of money because these companies are charging significantly less than Glock is charging. A lot of that has to do with a lack of labor and a lack of quality control that goes into the handguns, so you are more likely to get a lemon with one of those cheaper firearms. But at the same time, the odds of you getting a lemon is the risk of you getting a lemon is not worth spending that much more money to just getting an actual Glock, or at least that is the point of view that a lot of other people have. And evidently I have it as well, because despite being a firearms owner, I do not own a single Glock. So, thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Yeah, I could have both of these for the price of one single Glock, so I guess that's the route that I decided to go. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I will see you guys on the next episode.
once I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.